All right, so we're diving deep into Captain America, Brave New World today, and wow, you really went all out, huh? Wikipedia articles, reviews, the whole shebang.
Yeah, I really wanted to get the full picture, not just like the trailers and headlines.
Yeah, this seems like more than just another superhero movie, especially with Sam Wilson as Captain America. It brings up so many questions.
Right, like what does it even mean to be Captain America now? And especially for a black man to take on that mantle.
Yeah, the film really seems to grapple with that, especially with Isaiah Bradley's story. It's heavy stuff.
It is. It's definitely not shying away from the tough questions.
And for anyone who hasn't seen Falcon and the Winter Soldier, can you give us the rundown on Isaiah Bradley?
Yeah, so basically he was a black super soldier experimented on by the government during the Korean War and then completely forgotten.
It's like a hidden chapter of American history and a really dark one at that.
And Brave New World connects that history to the legacy of Captain America, you know? It asks what it means for Sam to carry that weight.
It makes you wonder how he can even reconcile those ideals with the reality he's facing. Speaking of reality, we've got some familiar faces popping up and some new ones too.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Let's talk about the Hulk in the room, shall we?
You mean the Red Hulk in the Oval Office? Harrison Ford as President Thaddeus Ross, now with anger management issues.
Hold on, Harrison Ford. Like Han Solo and Indiana Jones, he's a superpowered president now.
Well, in the comics, Ross becomes Red Hulk because of his obsession with catching the Hulk. It's kind of like a dark mirror image of Banner.
So it's not just a random casting choice. They're actually connecting it to his character's history.
Exactly. And the movie uses that to say something about political power. The president's supposed to be stable and in control, but he's literally a rage monster.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see what
Yeah.
you're saying. It's like a visual representation of what a lot of people are feeling about those in power.
Right. And that power struggle isn't just between Captain America and Red Hulk. There's this new metal, too, adamantium.
Adamantium, what's that all about?
It's even stronger than vibranium. So suddenly the balance of power is shifting again.
So this isn't just a superhero fight. It has real-world implications.
Think about it. Vibranium is mostly controlled by Wakanda, but now there's adamantium, and every country's going to want it.
That sounds like a recipe for disaster, like a superpowered arms race.
Exactly. And that's the kind of world Sam Wilson is stepping into as Captain America.
Talk about a challenge.
Sure.
And then we've got Samuel Stearns, a.k.a. Mr. Blue. Last time we saw him, he was getting a dose of Hulk blood.
Yeah, and now he's back as the leader, a super intelligent mastermind with a score to settle.
So it's not enough that Sam's facing a Red Hulk president.
Yeah.
Now he's got a super genius pulling strings too.
It definitely raises the stakes, and it makes you wonder what it even means to be a hero in a world this messed up.
It's like they took the conspiracy vibe from Winter Soldier and cranked it up to 11.
Yeah, and they're asking, can you really fight for justice when the systems themselves are corrupt?
That's a heavy question.
Yeah.
And then there's the whole Serpent Society thing, which seemed to go through a lot of changes during production.
Right. They were supposed to be a bigger part of the film, but then the reshoots happen.
So Seth Rollins and Rosa Salazar got cut. That's a bummer.
Yeah, they were cast as members of the Serpent Society, but their parts ended up on the cutting room floor.
And Giancarlo Esposito stepped in.
Yeah, he plays the main villain connected to the group Sidewinder.
It's always interesting to see how these behind-the-scenes changes affect the final film. And speaking of changes, let's talk about Sabra.
Ah, Sabra. Yeah, her inclusion in the film definitely sparked some controversy.
Why is that? I haven't really been following that part of it.
Well, the original Sabra in the comics was kind of a walking stereotype of Israeli characters.
Oh, so people were worried the film would perpetuate those harmful tropes.
Exactly. It was a sensitive situation. But Marvel Studios said they were taking a new approach to the character.
So they're trying to update her for a modern audience while still respecting her origins.
It's a tough balance to strike, but it's interesting to see how they're navigating these issues.
Okay, so we've got a new Captain America facing a Red Hulk president, a supervillain pulling strings, a mysterious new metal, and a controversial new character. It's a lot to take in.
It is, but that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating, We're getting beneath the surface and exploring all these different layers.
It's like we're piecing together a puzzle, and each piece reveals a little more about the bigger picture. Speaking of pieces, let's talk about the visuals.
Visually, the film is stunning. I was really impressed with how they used cherry blossom trees throughout the movie.
Cherry blossoms. That's an interesting choice.
Yeah.
What do you think they represent?
Well, symbolism is always open to interpretation, but I think they represent a fragile hope amidst all the chaos.
That makes sense. They're beautiful, but also delicate and temporary, like a reminder that peace is something you have to fight for.
Exactly. And they even show up in the final battle between Captain America and Red Hulk.
Oh, wow. So they're not just background decorations. They're actually woven into the story.
It's like they're asking us to look for the beauty even in the midst of conflict.
And speaking of beauty, let's talk about the not-so-beautiful Red Hulk. We've talked about Harrison Ford's performance, but what about the CGI? Did it hold up?
Oh yeah, I was actually really impressed. They managed to make him look imposing and believable without being too over the top.
So it's not just a big red blob smashing things.
No, not at all. They really captured the raw power, but also the inner turmoil. You can see it in his eyes.
It's amazing what they can do with CGI these days.
Yeah.
It's like they're creating living, breathing characters out of pixels.
And it adds so much to the story. When the effects are done right, you don't even notice them. You're just swept up in the emotion of it all.
It sounds like they really went all out with this film. The performances, the music, the visuals, everything is top-notch.
And that's what makes this deep dive so rewarding. We're not just talking about a movie, we're talking about art.
It's not just entertainment, it's an experience.
Exactly. And it makes you think you know about the world we live in and the choices we make.
It's not afraid to ask tough questions and to challenge our assumptions.
And that's what we need more of. Movies that make us think and feel and engage with the world around us.
Well said. All right, so we've talked about the themes, the characters, the visuals, but there's one element we haven't touched on yet, the music.
Oh, the music is fantastic. It's both epic and intimate, and it perfectly captures the emotional tone of each scene.
It sounds like they put a lot of thought into the soundtrack rather than just slapping on some generic superhero music.
Right. It's not just background noise. It's an integral part of the storytelling.
And it adds to that immersive experience you were talking about. It's like you're transported into the world of the film.
Exactly. And speaking of immersive experiences, we have to address the elephant in the room, the Red Hulk.
Yeah, we talked about Harrison Ford's performance, but what about the visual representation? How did the CGI hold up? I have to admit I was a little worried about that.
I know what you mean. Sometimes those CGI-heavy characters can look a little off, but in this case, I think they did a great job.
Really? So it's not just a big red blob smashing things?
No, they managed to capture the raw power of the character, but also the underlying conflict and rage.
So there's nuance to his movement and expressions, even though he's entirely CGI.
Exactly. It's a testament to the skill of the visual effects team that they were able to create a character that feels so emotionally resonant.
It sounds like they really put a lot of thought into every aspect of this film, from the performances to the music to the visual effects. It's not just a superhero movie, it's a work of art.
I agree. And that's what makes this deep dive so rewarding. We're not just scratching the surface here, we're really digging into the layers of meaning and exploring the ideas that the film is grappling with.
And speaking of grappling with ideas, this movie throws a lot at you. It's got political intrigue, superhero action, ethical dilemmas, and even some philosophical questions about the nature of power and responsibility.
It's a lot to unpack, but that's what makes it so compelling. It's not afraid to challenge the audience to think critically about the world around them and to consider different perspectives.
It's asking us to look beyond the simple good versus evil narrative and to grapple with the complexities of a world where those lines are often blurred. And it's doing it in a way that is both entertaining and thought-provoking.
And ultimately, I think that's what makes Captain America: Brave New World such a powerful film. It's not just about escapism, it's about engaging with the issues that matter, the choices we make, and the kind of world we want to create.
So where do we go from here? We've spent this entire deep dive exploring the themes, the characters, the controversies, and the visual spectacle of this movie. What's the takeaway? What does it all mean?
That's a great question. And I think the answer is different for everyone. This film offers a lot of food for thought, and it's up to each individual viewer to decide what resonates most with them. But if there's one thing I hope people take away from this deep dive, it's a sense of curiosity, a willingness to ask questions, and to engage with the world in a more thoughtful and critical way.
It's, like you said earlier, it's about using our power, whether it's physical, intellectual, or simply the power of our voices, to make a positive impact on the world. And that starts with being informed, being aware of the issues, and being willing to have those tough conversations.
Exactly, and that's what makes these deep dives so valuable. They're not just about summarizing information, they're about sparking a conversation, encouraging critical thinking, and empowering individuals to make a difference.
It's like we're planting seeds of knowledge and insight, and hopefully those seeds will take root and grow into something meaningful.
And who knows, maybe those seeds will even inspire someone to create their own work of art, whether it's a movie, a book, a song, or even just a thoughtful conversation with a friend. The possibilities are endless.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time for us to wrap up this deep dive. But before we go, I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder. We've talked a lot about the introduction of adamantium and its potential impact on the balance of power in the MCU. But what about the real world? If a material like that existed, what would it mean for us? How would it change our society, our relationships, our very understanding of what it means to be human?
That's a fascinating question. And I think it's one that we all need to be thinking about. The world is constantly changing, new technologies are emerging, and we need to be prepared to face the challenges and opportunities that come with them.
So let's keep those conversations going. Let's keep asking questions, and let's keep challenging ourselves to learn and grow. Because in a world that's constantly evolving, the only constant is the need for knowledge and understanding.
Well said. And until next time, keep diving deep. I was skeptical at first, you know? It's hard to picture Han Solo as a giant red rage monster.
I get it.
But
But he pulled it off.
yeah, actually he did. He brings this real weariness to the role, you know? Like a sense of inner turmoil that makes it believable.
So it's not just mindless smashing. There's some depth to the performance.
Absolutely. Even though Red Hulk doesn't talk, you can see the conflict in Ford's eyes, like he's fighting the monster inside him.
It's almost tragic, right? Like a part of him hates what he's become, but he can't control it.
It's like a darker version of Banner's struggle, and it plays into the whole theme of power and control.
Yeah, we see that with the leader, too, and even with Sam as he figures out what it means to be Captain America in this world.
It's like they're showing different sides of power, you know? Ross is raw, destructive force. The leader is all about manipulation. And Sam, he's trying to find a way to use his power for good.
To inspire hope instead of fear.
Exactly. And the film doesn't shy away from the fact that power can be dangerous. You know? It can corrupt people.
But it can also be used to protect people, to fight for what's right.
It's all about how you choose to wield it. And that's a question that runs throughout the whole movie.
We see it with Isaiah Bradley, too. His story is a reminder that power can be abused, especially by those who are supposed to protect us.
Yeah, it's a tough reminder that the systems we rely on can be flawed, and that those flaws often hurt the most vulnerable.
And it adds another layer to Sam's challenge, right?
Yeah.
He's not just fighting villains, he's fighting a system that's broken.
It makes you wonder if you can really change things from the inside, or if you need to tear it all down and start over.
That's a huge question. And it's one that the film doesn't really answer. It leaves it up to us to think about.
And while all that's going on, we've got the Serpent Society lurking in the shadows, adding to the chaos.
Yeah, it's interesting how they were scaled back but still managed to have an impact.
It's like they're waiting for the right moment to strike. When everyone's distracted by the big fight, they see an opportunity.
To take advantage of the situation.
Exactly. It's a reminder that even seemingly small players can have a big impact, especially when the stakes are high.
Speaking of high stakes, we have to talk about Sabra. Her inclusion in the film was definitely a risky move.
It was. But I think they handled it well. They seem to have avoided the stereotypical pitfalls of the original character.
So they managed to modernize her without erasing her heritage.
I think so. It's a difficult balance to strike, but they seem to have pulled it off.
And it adds to the film's exploration of identity and representation. Right. It's not shying away from those conversations.
And that's important, especially in a world that's becoming increasingly globalized and interconnected.
We need to be having those conversations, and films like this can help to start them.
Absolutely. And let's not forget about the visual spectacle of it all. We've talked about the cherry blossoms, but the whole film is visually stunning.
The action scenes, the special effects, the cinematography, it all comes together to create a truly immersive experience.
It's like you're right there in the middle of it all, feeling the weight of every punch and the heat of every explosion.
And yet it never feels overwhelming or gratuitous. The visuals serve the story.
Exactly. And that's what sets this film apart from so many other superhero movies. It's not just about spectacle, it's about storytelling.
It's about using those visual elements to enhance the emotional impact of the story, to make us feel something.
And it works. It really draws you in and makes you care about these characters and their struggles.
It's a reminder that even amidst all the CGI and explosions, there's still a human heart beating at the center of this film.
And that's what makes it so powerful. It's not just entertainment. It's a reflection of our own humanity.
Our hopes, our fears, our flaws, and ultimately, our potential.
And it challenges us to think about the kind of world we want to create. A world where power is used for good and where everyone has a chance to thrive.
So we've talked about the performances, the visuals, the themes, but there's one more element I want to touch on: the music.
Yeah.
What role does the soundtrack play in this film?
The music is phenomenal. It's both grand and intimate, and it really underlines the emotional beats of the story.
So it's not just a generic superhero score. They really took the time to craft something special.
Absolutely. The composer has a real knack for capturing the mood and tone of each scene.
Yeah.
And it adds so much to the overall experience.
It's like the music becomes another character in the film almost.
Yeah, it's like an invisible force that guides our emotions and helps us to connect with the story on a deeper level.
And it's another example of how much care and attention to detail went into making this film.
Exactly. They didn't just throw it together. They really thought about every element and how it would contribute to the overall effect.
And speaking of effects, we have to talk about the Red Hulk. We've talked about Ford's performance, but what about the visual representation of the character? How does the CGI hold up?
I was a little worried too at first, you know. Sometimes CGI characters can look a little wonky.
Yeah, like a video game cutscene or something.
Right. But honestly, they did a really good job with Red Hulk. He's big and powerful, but he doesn't look fake.
So there's actual detail in the CGI. It's not just a red blur.
Yeah, they really captured his expressions, you know. Even though he doesn't talk, you can see the rage and the conflict in his face.
So they managed to give him a personality even though he's a CGI monster.
Exactly. It's pretty impressive. When the effects are that good, you forget you're even watching CGI.
That's the goal, right? To create an immersive experience where the audience is just swept up in the story.
And it sounds like they really succeeded with this film. We've talked about the performances, the music, the visuals, everything is top-notch.
Like they didn't just make a superhero movie, they made a statement.
Yeah, and that's what makes these deep dives so much fun. We get to really unpack all those layers and explore what the film is trying to say.
And this movie has a lot to say. It's got political intrigue, superhero action, ethical dilemmas. It's a lot to process.
It is, but it's all handled so well. It never feels preachy or overwhelming.
It's just a really well-crafted story that happens to have some big ideas woven into it.
And it challenges us to think, you know, about the world around us and the choices we make.
It's not just offering escapism, it's asking us to engage with the real world.
And I think that's what makes Captain America: Brave New World so powerful. It's a film that stays with you long after the credits roll.
It makes you think about what it means to be a hero, what it means to fight for justice, and what it means to be human in a world that's increasingly complex.
So where do we go from here? We've explored the themes, the characters, the visuals. What's the takeaway for our listeners?
That's a great question. And I think the answer is different for everyone. This movie offers a lot of food for thought, and it's up to each individual viewer to decide what resonates with them.
But if there's one thing I hope people take away from this deep dive, it's a sense of curiosity, a willingness to ask questions, and a desire to engage with the world around them in a more meaningful way.
Like you said earlier, it's about using our power, whether it's physical, intellectual, or just the power of our voices to make a positive impact.
Exactly. And these deep dives are all about that, empowering people to think critically and to make informed decisions.
It's about planting seeds of knowledge and insight and watching them grow.
And who knows what those seeds might blossom into? Maybe a new work of art? Maybe a thoughtful conversation? Maybe even a change in the world?
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time for us to wrap up this deep dive. But before we go, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought to ponder. We've talked a lot about adamantium and its potential to upset the balance of power in the MCU. But what about the real world? If a material like that existed, how would it change our society, our relationships, our very understanding of what it means to be human?
That's a huge question, and it's one that we should all be thinking about. Technology is constantly evolving, and we need to be prepared for the challenges and opportunities that come with it.
So let's keep those conversations going. Let's keep learning. Let's keep growing. Because in a world that's always changing, the one thing we can always count on is the need for knowledge and understanding.
Well said. And until next time, keep diving deep.